We are live. Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buonasera, Laziali tuning in. This is an emergency edition of the Biancocelesti broadcast. I am your host, Sean McIntosh, joined as always by my counterpart from Canada, none other than Stephen K. Moore. Today we are joined by a couple guests. First-time guest for us, long time coming. Good friend Jerry Mancini, as well as Anthony Williams. Unfortunately, we're joined first time with you guys on the Biancocelesti broadcast. Pretty grim day. This is an emergency podcast. Stephen and I had some other plans when talking about today's episode. We had originally intended to speak and recap the season. Lots of highs, lots of lows. Certainly a different vibe now, which probably changes our opinion on how we view this season. But we're here to talk now about the news that broke this morning, this afternoon, wherever you were around the world. This afternoon for me, when I got the news while I was sitting in the office, Simone Inzaghi is no longer a Lazio manager. Conte, as everybody knows by now, I'd imagine, was mutually parted ways with Inter yesterday, which came as a shock to some, not a surprise by others, but it left a carousel. And Stephen, I'm going to give you the opportunity just to quickly recap, because I'm going to give you a shout out here. You are one of the first Laziali that I saw, and it's been talked about, but you went on record, you put pen to paper, you spoke on it, you tweeted about it, you saw some flack from some other fans, but you had talked about it for a couple weeks now that it seemed destined, or it looked really likely. So while many didn't want to believe it, I certainly didn't know what was going to happen. Didn't feel good about it as it kind of dragged, but you said it yourself. Like, it didn't look like it was going to happen. You called it. So shout out, Steven. I hate that you were right about this one, but give us a quick recap in terms of timeline and what ended up going down.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said there, I don't think I'm entirely a fan of this. Obviously, Simone Inzaghi is Lazio through and through. Played with us, coached with us, has won awards with us, achieved so much with us. So it's obviously sad to see him go. But at the end of the day, it's just been coming. I feel like throughout the season, Sean, we've said it multiple times. The most disappointing thing about this season that we felt was the performances. They've dropped off completely. And part of this was due to, I think, the motivation for Inzaghi. I think he's been doing so well over the past few seasons to motivate his players. And while his passion will never die, that's totally out of the question. I feel like he said there, some information came out today where he said that, I don't have the motivation to continue carrying on this team. Who knows if that's absolutely true or not? But that's kind of the things where I see that happening, right? 16 months ago, he says he's been waiting for a contract renewal, right? And you take a look back and see what position they were in at that time, doing the Champions League and stuff like that, seeing where we'd come through. We started the season pretty rough in Serie A, turned it back on, obviously progressed the round of 16 Champions League, came against Bayern, came up short, a few mistakes. It's tough to beat one of the best teams in the world. But then you go on into the season and we're dropping these points and then also struggling to win against these teams that we should be basically rolling over. How many games that Jerry had wrote previews about, or that I had looked into stats, and it was Lazio hasn't lost against this team in X years. They haven't lost in this stadium in X years. And every single time that would happen, that record is being shattered. So although we were breaking a lot of records, we were also losing a lot of records on the negativity side of things. So as the season kind of moved on, you get to that point where we're getting to the summer. We're waiting for something to happen. There's rumors about signing contract here, signing contract here. You think when you're doing a presser, one of the questions that would come up and arise would be, hey, are you getting the contract? Are you putting pen to paper? What's the situation on this? I don't know if the questions weren't asked, or if he was ignoring them, or if he didn't talk about them too much. But it just kind of seemed like it was dragging on and dragging on. When these things seem to happen, there's definitely something going on behind the scenes. And that's definitely the case with Lotito. It always has been with a bunch of different things that he does. But Inzaghi being himself, it's kind of the same situation that he was in when he first got hired. When we had that Bielsa situation, kind of waiting for him, are we going to offer him a contract? Are we not going to offer him a contract? This time it was the opposite thing, whereby, as it states, or as Lotito has stated, he was putting pen to paper. They talked about it all day yesterday, and then obviously matters turned for the worse today at noon, and he's come out and kind of seems salty about the matter. We'll get more into that later on with the question from Maruf. But yeah, and ultimately, end of the day, it didn't seem like it was going to continue, and there's a bunch of reasons, but yeah, it's kind of the overcap that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that leads us obviously to where we stand today. It's been a few hours. I know I've had a chance to at least text and message a few of you, but we'll start with Jerry. Jerry, what I don't want to know because I'll ask you that here later. I don't want to know how you feel at this moment. Let's talk about how you felt in the moment. How'd you hear the news, and what was your instant reaction?
My news, the news, how I heard it, I was at work. I was in the car and I looked at my phone and I seen Simone Inzaghi joining Inter, and I'm like, what the F is going on here? I tweeted out like videos how excited I was about Inzaghi, and the next thing I know I look like an idiot. It's like straight up wrong. I didn't see this coming. Honestly,
No one did though.
I didn't see it coming. And Steven actually provides good points about this season, that it was a big downhill with Inzaghi. But I also think that every manager that has done so well deserves one poor year. And for me, this was Inzaghi's one poor year where you get a free buy and you kind of bounce back next year. You know what I mean? Like, as much as we can say that everything was kind of tailing off for Lazio, I just think that I would like to see what Inzaghi would have been able to do next season and try to like get a better transfer market. That never helped him. A lot of factors were against him. So he comes in, he brings his team back to European competition for 5 straight years. Champions League this year, he got us to the round of 16, which I thought was really good. So as much as people are going to say, oh, it was a bad season for Inzaghi and he should have got the young players to play, the results are always there, even when we have a mediocre squad. So,
well, you mentioned it, Jerry, because I think we have to be fair. Certainly, we all wanted Champions League. That was certainly the club's ambition to follow last year's top 4 finish with another one. Both Steven and I went on record predicting that we weren't going to finish in top 4 because we didn't feel good about the transfer market. We also felt just better about how other teams positioned themselves. But I think when you look at this season, we all have to be honest with ourselves. While we can be disappointed without finishing top 4, we still have European play, which is never a guarantee. And look, we finished top 2 in our group, and there were some really special moments this year in Champions League, given a very tough hill to climb with what this team had to face with COVID. And we know it was a goofy year for a lot of teams. And so I thought, while it wasn't the greatest season, while we like to at least finish with a trophy of some sort in a year that we don't finish in the top 4, I thought, all in all, nothing to hold our heads down about. And so obviously now, given this news, kind of changes my outlook on what this season looks like. But, I want to kick it to Anthony. Anthony, where were you when you heard the news, and what was your instant reaction?
So I was sitting at a baseball game in Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden I set my search for a few, Lazio accounts, and I started getting these alerts, Lotito, that were like saying, oh, he was having second thoughts, and I'm like, well, what is he confused about? What second refresh my feed? And I was like, oh, Simone, no, like he was disappointed. Because I think some of the most special moments over the last few years have been seeing voice during the press conference. I can run down the touch line after a goal, and just seeing that he has for Lazio, it was very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, tough for everybody. Steven, for yourself, where were you? What'd you feel in the moment? And then I'll start off too with you. How's that changed within the past couple hours for you?
So where was I? At work as well. Obviously, I thought this Sega was done. Last night, I was finally saying, okay, we finally got some peace a little bit because Lazio's transfer market usually doesn't start till the end. But now it looks like it took a turn for the worse and started right at the beginning. So I thought, okay, thank God it's done after last night. And as I said, I was impartial to if he were to leave or if he were to stay. Like I said, he's a Lazio fan. He's Lazio through and through, so I have my utmost respect for him. But the issue is we would start to become frustrated more so than we already are with his tactics, with his formation, with his in-game management and such like that. It would only get worse. And it's one of those things, like I had mentioned, like when a player is on a downhill, like let's say we look at Lulic, for example. Lulic, Lazio forever. Like we will always remember the Coppa Italia victory, right? And what he did for us and how long he's been with Lazio. But he's obviously not at his prime anymore. And especially for him coming back after that injury, credit to him where it's due. But he's not the player that he was a year ago. He's not the player that he was 5 years ago when he was in his prime, right? So you look at something like that, it would be beneficial. Same thing with Parolo, to leave on a high note, not leave on kind of like a part where we're like, okay, please just kind of get out the door. It's like we're a retirement home. We don't want that to be the case. And it's kind of the same thing with the manager approach with Inzaghi. It's one of those things where he had done well. He'd achieved so much with us, but he couldn't go any further, whether that be because Lotito wasn't spending the amounts to buy these players, or whether it be Tade failing to acquire these players. That's the issue we were running into. He had maxed out. So it was one of those things where we could continue on. The next 3 years would probably be the same results, if not even worse, because some of our top players might have left. Who knows what the details of the contract would have been from Lotito saying, okay, maybe we'll keep these three players 100%, like Macerbi, Milinkovic-Savic, Luis Alberto, Immobile. We'll keep those players if you stay for another 3 years. But maybe it was different. Maybe Luis Alberto or Milinkovic-Savic leaves this summer. Those players are going to be very difficult to replace, and especially despite all Simone Inzaghi's tactics, who knows? Maybe him staying would have been even for the worse. So obviously we know what he can do to get the best out of players, but disappointed overall at the kind of the situation. Like we don't want to point any fingers at because we don't know the exact details, and who knows if we ever will. Whether it was Lotito's fault, whether it was Inzaghi's fault. Some people might say obviously the latter, the former. Who knows? But the situation is disappointing as a whole. So obviously, yeah, like I said, I was at work and kind of saw this pop up and very surprised and kind of taken off guard by it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, taken off guard was exactly how I felt. You know, I was at work, middle of the day. I get a notification, a couple notifications. I've actually turned off my notifications on Twitter, so I'd gotten a private message from a good friend that was sent me a mi dispiace, and I was like, "What happened?" Yeah. And it was like, "Your boy Simone." And, you know, I had to jump on Twitter and of course, see all the notifications, the news. I'm so far back, I'm having to, catch up on my Twitter feed. And honestly, it was just shock. It was a little bit of just not believing it because, again, you hear all this other news about this deal kind of being finalized. They've come to terms, everything but pen to paper. And honestly, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know whether to be angry. I didn't know who to be angry at. I saw a lot of voices, displeasure with Simone, hatred for Lotito, confusion. I was just honestly bewildered, had no idea what to feel. A few hours later, got to say, I feel the exact same way. I don't necessarily know where to point the finger. Should I be mad at Simone? So many good times with him. He's one of us. That doesn't change. So it's one of those things. I don't know that I feel any different, but I started to react a little bit differently. And I want to talk about placing blame, if there is some to place. But something didn't sit right when a press release came out from Lazio. And I want to read it in Italian and English for all of our listeners. So Lazio posted this. Shortly after the news, I'll give them credit. This is probably the quickest they've ever released some sort of a press release. But in true Lazio fashion, not in the greatest of taste, leaves a lot of information left out. And it's very cold. So, rispettiamo il ripensamento di un allenatore e prima di un giocatore che per lunghi anni ha legato il suo nome alla famiglia della Lazio e tanti successi biancocelesti. So translated in English, we respect the change of heart of a coach, and before that, a player who for a long time attached his name to the Lazio family and to a lot of biancocelesti success. Couple missing pieces. They failed to even address his name, which, again, for me, reading that for somebody that has given a lot to the club as a player, as a Primavera coach, and as our first team manager that took this club to Champions League for the first time in 13 years. That really started to bother me when I read that they couldn't even say his name. And regardless of who's to blame, regardless of who's at fault, that didn't sit right with me. Jerry, your thoughts on that?
I didn't even know about the actual announcement until I actually, like yourself, like I heard that they didn't announce his name. And that's Lotito being Lotito, where he didn't get his way. He didn't get what he wanted. He said that he had an agreement in place and he was supposed to meet with Inzaghi today. Never happened. And I guess that it left a bad taste in his mouth. Now, we don't know what's true and what's not true between the two.
Right. But here's what we do know. This, because you're right, we don't actually know the fact. And we may never know. My problem personally is this has happened time and time again. And there's only one person sitting in this seat each of these times, whether it is player, manager, you name it. It's always Lotito. So again, we don't know what happened, but what we do know is that there's one key figure that's always at the center of this. Which makes it hard not to be mad at one person. Steven, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit that spot on right there. And I know Anthony just sent us a message as well saying I completely agree with you. It just seems odd to me, right? Like you see Inzaghi show up to the meeting. Everyone's supposed to be there. Inzaghi shows up, sits down with Lotito, then we see them leave, and they're supposed to go have dinner together, and the night ends. Like, how long did they sit together? Who knows? Let's just say it was over an hour. An hour is a long time to discuss one certain matter. And whether it be, like I said, there's definitely other factors in play with regards to, are we keeping these players? How much are we spending? How much are you giving me? Like, that's another thing I want to touch upon. Imagine being in a position where, let's just say 16 months ago, Lotito said, okay, we're going to wait for the season to be completed. You finish top four, you get 2.5 million plus whatever else. If not, you get 2. Played hard all season, comes down to the last 6-7 games where you're still in that spot, and then you lose against Fiorentina and everything's basically done. And at that moment, you know that you're getting a paid off because of that moment. Obviously, there's things that have happened throughout the season, at the beginning of the season, where we should have picked up more points, shouldn't have lost against certain teams. But at that point, that's when like everything was lost. Like you could clearly tell it in the players' play and Inzaghi's tactics and his decisions and his motivation as well. I don't think it was there. I don't think anything that he was doing before previous seasons was there. So it just seems odd to me at the end of the day that how long they had to sit there and talk about things and why it was a false alarm, I guess you can say, right? Like, why would they have tweeted out and why would they have reported these top journalists who obviously they're not right 100% of the time, but most of these people they have the inside information on these situations, right? So if they're tweeting this stuff going out saying, you know what, he has signed this contract, they're put their pen to paper, whatever the case may be, we're basically done. Sorry, I just got a message. Are you going to leave the broadcast here? We're going to be able to watch it afterwards on YouTube as well. We're going to save that afterwards. But basically, like if you're Lotito and you're going to that meeting and these reporters are saying, hey, you know what, we've signed this contract, they're basically going out and saying that, and then it contradicts what we're seeing on the news the next day, right? Because if Lotito's coming out and saying, you know what, we signed the contract, we're ready to go, I was just waiting for a signature, he's basically going out and saying that too. So it's contradicting statements, and then you have the idea of, does it make sense that Lotito signed this contract by himself and they just verbally agreed to this after sitting down for lunch and talking with multiple hours? It just seems odd to me. So the whole situation, like I don't think we'll ever know the truth, and who knows if these top journalists and reporters know it as well. But it's very odd.
I do want to say one thing, and not because of like Inter and like my relationship with my dad and all that. I just think that Inter is the last team to blame. Okay, it's not that a team came in and said, let's take your leftovers and we're coming in for the swoop. Don't blame Inter at all for what they did. What they did is what Lotito should have done 12 or 16 months ago, and they took care of their own backyard when we left it open. Like we could have, I think we could have sold Inzaghi for money because his contract wasn't fully expired, like the rights and all that. Like we basically let this out to dry, and the only person to blame here is Lotito.
Continuously. That's why I think people are showing hate towards Inter, because it's not just this situation, and obviously most of the fault should be on Lotito and management not doing this, but time and time again, you look at Keita, you look at Kentreva, you look at all these players, you look at all these players that Inter have taken from us, and obviously most of them don't work out, so fine for Inter to keep taking them, but end of the day, I think that's why people are getting a little bit upset with that.
Yeah, but, I'll say this, and it's funny you bring that up, Jerry. I was going to rag you a little bit, as our closet Interista. I was gonna joke you that maybe today wasn't so bad after all for you. But you make up
their face and
underneath. He's got the Inter jersey. But look, on a serious note, Jerry makes a great point because, while Inter have a history of obviously snagging a lot of our talent, this was home field advantage for Lotito. I mean, we're talking about all the first opportunities. He's got a manager that bleeds Biancoceleste, that had a passion for the club, that wanted to be here, that has been here for years and years. It's home field advantage. I mean, he bottled it. I said that exact same thing to a couple folks that I had been messaging throughout the week before this deal was closed, and there were rumors. I was like, if this doesn't happen, it's Lotito bottling it. Period. That's all there is to it. And Inter they did what they had to do. Of course, I mean there's an available manager. They believe he's the best available manager, and they got it done. That's exactly what we would want to do. So, Anthony, I'll give you a chance to chime in here. Where do you sit in terms of, especially post that announcement, that press release that Lazio issued? How do you feel about that, and who are you blaming for this?
Before last night, I honestly thought there was no shot Inzaghi was back, only because he looked like a man did for the last 5-6 weeks in his press conferences, on the touchline, everywhere. I mean, especially after he came back from COVID. I really, really felt like he was just at his end of the rope, because I think he noticed that this was as ambitious as Lotito is going to be in the market, in terms of the resources given to Inzaghi to continue to grow the project. I think this is as ambitious as Lazio is going to be under this ownership, and I think he just was trying. This was probably the furthest he could take Lazio with the players and the budget he's been given and the markets he's been given.
Absolutely no, and Anthony, you mentioned that, and that's kind of what I had said as well on Twitter, like with regards to like the level that Inzaghi's at, like with regards to taking us to a certain point, and also for his development too. Like if he wants to become one of these top managers, I tweeted this out, he's got to move on to a team that's going to allow him to basically do that. End of the day, like instead of taking risks on these no-name players or players from outside the top 5 leagues that are proven. Like we spent 20 million on a player. Should we have been spent better? Absolutely. I think we've all agreed on that now, especially after seeing this season pass. But it's one of those things where Inter will spend 20 million and they will know that that player is good. So it's kind of a benefit where he's hopefully going to succeed. Obviously, we want to see him do the best. Obviously, not beating Lazio. I hope every time Lazio plays Inter that he loses. But end of the day, like he needed to make that switch if he wants to become a top manager, because like you said, he's reached that ceiling. He's reached that point in his Lazio career, like where you just said, he's only going to get this much. And he can only do so much, although it's been very good, obviously, because we've seen what he's been able to do with the players at his disposal. But end of the day, it comes to a point where you have to part ways.
And I really do wonder, Shawn, if you mind me saying one last thing.
Yeah.
I really do wonder if it had less to do necessarily with the budget, but more the input that he had. Clearly, he wanted to play out from the back this year. $1 million into center backs that can play with their feet. We put it into a striker that can't run. I mean, how much say he has in the transfer market, or had, I guess.
Well, that's a great point. And honestly, and this is me just projecting without any insider knowledge, but I feel that was the biggest issue there. That yeah, I mean, everybody wants to get paid more, but I think Simone understands. He's not a fool. He knows who Lotito is. He knows where the club's finances are. He's not going to go from making $2 million to $8 million a year. Like he knows that, right? He knows if it's about money, he probably would have left a long time ago. But where I think the cause of dissension was probably his desire to have more input, to have more control. We heard it for quite some time. We'd always hoped that he was kind of like the Sir Alex Ferguson of Lazio. Well, in order to be that, he's got to have a level of control over the market. And I guess is that just wasn't something that Lotito was willing to give. We certainly don't know what the relationship is right now with Igliatare and whether or not he has a future. Certainly I'm not happy with them. The results these past few years have been pretty poor. So, I'd like to think that probably, Anthony, to your point, was a big part of the issue. I'm curious, though, Anthony, there's been a lot of positive from Simone's time. This is certainly tough because while we can point the finger at Lotito, there are a lot of claims out there that Simone did agree to signing with Lazio, and you got to be a man of your word, and it's certainly something that I was personally pissed off with a David Silva for not signing with Lazio because he verbally committed, and so this can leave a pretty poor taste in a lot of Laziali's mouth. But Anthony, I'll start with you. Where does this leave Simone's legacy with the club?
Well, I would say at first I felt like this kind of tarnished a little bit his reputation with the Laziali. But in all honesty, what he's given to the club in terms of from his time as a player to a manager, I mean, you really can't fault anything that he's done to this point. I mean, I think in some way we always will be grateful and have love in our heart for Simone. I don't think that will ever go away, for me at least.
Yeah, Jerry, how are you feeling about Simone?
So it took me 8 hours to say farewell to Simone Inzaghi with a positive message. Let's just say that. You know what? If it's true that he gave his word, it will tarnish his legacy. It will. Like there's no. It's like any job. It's like your job. If you give 20 years of working with the Norfolks that you work with, Shawn, and all of a sudden you agree that you were going to stay with them, and then all of a sudden tomorrow morning they wake up and you're like, hey, I just signed with the Tampa Bay Lightning. See you later. It's like, what? Like, what the heck, man? What's going on here? You throw everything down the drain, though. It's not the money here. I don't think it's the money that people care about. It's the fact that if Lotito is telling the truth, and that's 99.9% not happening, we know that. But if that 0.1% is true, it tarnishes his legacy, not just with us. It's even worse with the ultras. I think people are forgetting about the ultras here and like what that really means. Us, we're just casual fans, guys. We banter Inzaghi. We're nobody. No offense. You go to a freaking Stadio Olimpico and those ultras are ready to go when things are open again. He better watch out. People are not putting this into perspective because he's got a target on his back now. And I don't like to say it in a mean way. Like, it's not the right way to say it. But, like, if it's true that he had an agreement, a verbal agreement, and I was saying this, I just said a live video before I made it. It's like, what happened to respect in this game that I give you my word? And your word is powerful because it's not like Conte where you were with Inter for 2 years. Your word means nothing because there's no loyalty to the club. Inzaghi's word is strong because of what he has tied with the club. What Lotito has given him, people forget too. If it wasn't for Lotito, he wouldn't be in the position he is today. I think a lot of people kind of like disregard that. Now, he said that he waited 8 hours and that he had the contract ready and everything was agreed last night. And all he had to do was sign it off and his agent was supposed to come. And then all of a sudden you get a phone call from Inter. Like, and Inzaghi's story is that he wanted to sleep on it. He never gave him his word. And there was never an actual commitment to the contract. So you're hearing one side, you're hearing another side. It's hard. I don't want to go against Inzaghi for what he's been able to accomplish with the team. I hope that I'm wrong and that he left on terms where nothing was actually agreed upon. The last thing I want to say is that why wasn't the agreement just done yesterday? If you guys 8 hours they spent together apparently yesterday, like you said, Steve, they had dinner for an hour. The contract should have been made up already. That's when you sign it. Everyone's together. What the heck are you doing tomorrow morning to sign?
And this isn't a new club. Like, it's not, I mean, take the 8 hours, but this is 8 hours on top of the years that they've spent together. So it's, come on now. He's got to be one of the worst closers, worst salesmen I've ever seen, because this happens time and time again, and Lotito can't close the deal. So, Steven, for you, how's this affect how you view Simone?
I think I kind of gave my spiel about it. I think people know how I feel, and especially on Twitter as well. I think it's a mix of both ways. Like we said, it's all about the story and what comes out. I'd like to see Simone Inzaghi put out another statement and basically say, this is what happened. And based on that, my opinion will change. I'm going to stick with what Jerry basically had said there. I'm going to go with the fact that Lotito is lying and basically is being a sore loser right now and basically just trying to cover his own ass. And I'm going to go with Simone Inzaghi. Thank you. Like, end of the day, like, he's done what he's been able to do with this club. I know that we've all had issues with one thing, but obviously, end of the day, we're gonna have issues with any manager who comes, any player who comes, about a specific game, about a specific tactic, about a specific move, specific shot, whatever the case may be. We're always going to be critical on players and critical on managers, and especially critical on him because we knew that he had been at this club for a long time. He knows his ways around it. We know what he's been able to do. So getting him to progress that next stage, because if he tries to pull us at Inter, it won't work. Like that, it's as straight simple as that. Like he will be gone if he doesn't change his ways and kind of adapt his style of play to different things. And he's gonna have to change his whole game plan around too, because he doesn't have SMS anymore, being able to boss it in the midfield and win those 50-50s all the time and win those aerial duels. So if he doesn't kind of open up and play something different or be able to make these tactical changes in game and such and get them on point, I can't see him lasting there for longer than a year, to be completely honest with you. So it's one of those things where like we have to say thank you and kind of appreciate everything that he's done, but end of the day, it was time to part ways. I felt that it was coming for a while. Obviously, I'm not a reporter. I'm not a journalist. It's just opinions. It's about what's going on. It's kind of like what Jerry said. You relate to it as a regular job. Like if we're going into work and we keep saying, oh, hey, Steven, you signed that new contract yet? Looking to have you on as to get this promotion. Like, yeah, I'll sign that. I'll sign that after. All good to go. And then I come in the next day, I'm not there. Like it just kind of seems very fishy and it seems very odd. So I know it's Simone Inzaghi's statement was more so based on like his heart and feel for the club, but he didn't touch upon that part, which is very interesting because Lotito did the exact opposite. Like we said, he didn't even mention his name from the club statement, right? And who knows who did this? I kind of feel like it's him because same thing with, I believe it was Tade who came out last time about David Silva and kind of just gave that random 1 or 2 sentence statement. And it was kind of just like, oh, I respect the man, but not the player, or whatever the case may be. I respect the player, not the man. Like it just seemed like very odd about that. So I feel good about him, but obviously the situation is still, I think there's more to be discovered about it, hopefully.
Yeah, for me, I don't, again, it certainly, we all have the right to change our minds and our opinions as more information comes out. I'm upset. I can't necessarily fault Simone on this, but for me, whose legacy has taken a big hit, and if we want to call it a legacy. But, I've been one to defend Lotito pretty staunchly. I've been pretty open about believing that he gets a lot of unwarranted flack. There's certainly, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things that Lotito certainly deserves in terms of critiquing him. But I think a lot of people, especially Laziali, forget that, he saved this club. He does have us in really good financial stature. We have been able to grow. We have been able to put ourselves in a position where we can feel good. And it certainly felt like there was a ton of momentum to take a next step. And Lotito deserves the credit. Deserves the credit for giving Simone Inzaghi the opportunity, though it was a little lucky how it came about. But to me, there's always been issues with Lotito and the way he negotiates, and we've seen those problems time and time again, and you can kind of get frustrated with it. But this was the one where I can't defend it. It's a pretty dark stain on his record that can potentially change the trajectory of this club. Not to overreact, but it can certainly put us in a way that hurts us long term. Which segues to my question: where does this leave Lazio, Jerry? Where do you think this leaves us as a club?
We're a mid-table team now. I'm not doing the same mistake I did last summer where, Steven, you guys were right and I was wrong, where I thought that we were really good in the transfer market. I thought that we were coming into this season better. I thought Wesley Hoot wasn't. I think of all our signings, I'm going to defend Wesley Hoot, and I think he was probably our best signing this summer. I really do, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been in the round of 16 in the Champions League. I think a lot of people forget that when we had 12 players out, he was heavily dependent upon when we didn't have any center backs. I think that's really important. Like that, those are things that really stand out to me. Yes, he had a blunder against Inter, but he had an overall good game against them. Like, I don't think his performances were bad. And like the problem is that I was so excited about 20 million for Vedat Marici. And when you hear 20 million, what do you think right away? We got an all-star player. We got something coming in, and let's get ready to go, man. Mohamed Fadis, 10 million. Well, I'm thinking we got the next Sena Lulic, $10 million. This is Lazio spending $10 million, $20 million. You're thinking it's a good transfer market. Andres Pereira comes in. You're thinking this guy's going to start playing in the midfield. We got to back up to Luis Alberto. And like Stephen Moore said, things didn't go out the way it was. The rotation, not playing young players and all that stuff. But like you were saying, where does this leave Lazio? Tadi's got to go. That's first. He's got to go. No future for me. Exile. And you know what? Yeah, exile. I'm going there, man.
Exile.
To the island of Jerry.
Get him out.
Forget it, man. I and here's the thing: if Sinisa Mihalovic comes in, what's the red flag here? Todd is gone because they don't have a good relationship. They don't get along. So if Lotito's calling him, I think people gotta think about what's going on here now. Does that mean Todd's job's done if Mihalovic is coming? Because Mihalovic never wanted to come to Lazio if Todd was there still. So that kind of makes you think, wait a second, are we getting a new sporting director all of a sudden too? Now, the direction for me, it's a mid-table team right now. If Mihalovic and Mazzari comes in, they're bullshit. I'm sorry. I love the fact that Mihalovic has ties with Lazio, but this is not ties like Inzaghi where he progressed. Mihalovic just has done nothing with Bologna for me. He really ran that team to the ground as the season progressed. The guy who I want, and it's Lotito budget for me, is Vincenzo Italiano. That's the guy who I want to take over Lazio. He did a really good job with Spezia, like Inzaghi, with a small budget. Elevated players, good young players. Was able to keep Spezia from being relegated. This is a guy who fits the Lazio profile for me. Everything that Lotito wants to sign in a manager. Probably won't ask for a lot of money to spend, but we'll get some money to spend. Like, the quality is all there, and I think the biggest takeaway is that it's in Lotito's budget. That's the key takeaway here. Is that at the end of the day, we get a guy like Italiano who fits the profile, who fits the budget. That's my guy. I don't know what's gonna happen. Another guy who I would like is the guy from Porto. I can never pronounce his name right, Sergio Conceição. That's another guy, but his budget, I think it's 2.5 or 3 million he wants.
I think it's a lot more than that. I think
a lot.
I'm like the most out of any Portuguese team or something like that. Something ridiculous, but
Yeah, a couple comments here from some folks listening in. Waves mentioned Saudi time ? And then
I'm big sorry time.
yeah, so and then Luca Vinciguero asks or says, unless we get an ambitious coach, I can't see us taking the next step. Tade needs to leave as well. And then Edo is saying Consejo as well. So Anthony, where's Lazio now as a club, and who's your pick for the successor to Inzaghi?
I'm sitting here reading the comments. I am in total agreement with Luca. I think this is a pivotal moment for the team where I think you're either going to take a step back or possibly a step forward. I mean, you have a lot of contracts ending this summer and next. I think if you pick a manager and start a whole different project, and maybe that means parting way with some of our favorite players, I think we could rebuild Lazio to more than a mid-table team, as Sherry said. That being said, I don't know if they're going to go get a Sarri or, a top manager. But if we want to compete, I think we need to come in with someone with some ambition. But the question then becomes, are we going to have an owner that supports that ambition? And I think this is going to be very, very telling of the state of Lazio and what our ambition is.
Yeah. Before Steven, you jump in, Jerry, I know you had another point to make.
Okay, hold on. The last point. Well, I might have more, but Latito sells Lazio. That's the ambition I got, actually. And I just thought about it. He keeps selling Eterna, sell Lazio, because I think that he's taken Lazio. You know how you guys say that Inzaghi has taken Lazio as far as he can? I think Latito has taken Lazio as far as he can. How about we say this? Like, I think it's time that he sells the club. I don't think he can take, even if we want him to spend the money, I don't think he has the funds to do it like other owners do, like other outside. I know he can grow the brand and he can get investors and get sponsorship. That can help. I absolutely agree. But I think he's to the peak where this is where he's going to go. There's no other. I think.
He's shown the inability. That's the thing.
Yeah,
you're right. There's other avenues for revenue. Certainly, we know. Steven and I talk about this all the time. There's so many areas that the club needs to improve on, and that can drive revenue in tons of different opportunities. However, Lotito's been in place. He's clearly shown an unwillingness or inability to do it, whether it's of his own choosing or his just flat out inability to do it. However, I will go on record being absolutely scared to sell the club for risk of just losing any soul that we have because I do not want to, as much as I love winning, I do not want it to come at an expense of who we are and us just turning into one of these Super League teams. For me, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't want to become that. So it's about selling it to the right person.
I think looking at this, like what you were talking about, Jerry, with selling the club, I know we've had a little banter about this in messages as well, but the way I see it is ultimately it's a business. And although some owners and some people don't look at it this way, and although they don't portray it as this, Lotito has taken this club, maybe it was from a passion, whatever the case may have been, good opportunity. He's taken this club and he's brought us back up to a point where we're competing for a top place in Italy. Fantastic. Thing we need to kind of sit back and take in is that he is more than happy to continue where he is and finish mid-table and remain in Serie A indefinitely and pass the club on to his son if that is the case. Because he's not losing money. If he's not losing money, and a lot of money, he's doing the same thing year after year. He's keeping that small budget, and who knows, maybe things will change once we've paid off that debt. I don't see it happening. I think that's just the way, the type of business person he is, and everyone's got their own tactics and their own negotiation style, and right now it doesn't seem to be working for him too well in the transfer market with regards to that. But ultimately, it's a business, and I think that he's got a very good business going right now, and I can't see him selling the club anytime soon, especially with his son in line. It doesn't matter how young he is. I think he's around my age, to be completely honest with you. But going into the future, he's been with Lotito, his dad, and at Lazio for so long, where he's probably learned these traits. So even if Lotito were to move on, I can see him going in next. So obviously, like we said, we don't want to see an investor come in from abroad and kind of buy this club because we lose our soul. But maybe if it's not something like that, maybe it's if Lotito sells some of his shares to an owner whereby he still has most of the club, whether it be 51%, whether it be 60%. But he sells some of this. I think he's at 66 right now. But he sells some of it and gets those funds from overseas to be able to fund some of these transfers. Because as Jerry says, maybe the reason why we're not spending so much money is because he doesn't have that money to dish out, and that we don't want to put ourselves in more debt. It's a possibility, right? So there's a few different factors that you kind of can look at, and a few different views or point of views you can take into that. But yeah, ultimately, although it would be pretty funny and be the kind of the cherry on top of the ice cream right now with regards to our crazy situation over the past week, I can't see it really happening.
Well, whoever gets appointed. Sorry, Sean. Whoever gets appointed manager will tell you what the direction of this club is. That's it.
Absolutely.
I think that's the end goal here. Is that whoever your next year comes in within time frame, I would say within a few days, that will give you an idea of, okay, we're either going positive direction or we're going a step back. That's all I can say.
And for me, it has less to do with necessarily a name like Asari, but more so, are we going to change tactically? And does that mean we're going to have to invest in different types of players? Or maybe that means we get more out of the players we currently have. I mean, we've been sitting and watching a 3-5-2, and then this year playing out of the back the whole year. I would like to see us maybe move to a more Sarri ball-esque, like vertical movement forward, where it's just passing forward, possession, but moving forward in positive possession. I mean, I think that would maybe get more out of the creativity that some of the skilled attackers we have can exhibit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree there's in this. It's hard to feel that it's just going to be status quo. It really feels as if we're going to move forward or we're going to take steps back. And I believe, at least from a front office standpoint, which tends to equal player movement, but if it's a complete overhaul, with obviously a new manager, Itare leaving, it's hard to see the players staying the same too, because it's going to need to be a fresh new project. But I'd like to see Sarri, just because I think it would show a little bit of ambition. Obviously, he's coached successfully in our league. I think we are the right size club for him. I think now talk about a personality with a Lotito, but I think we have the right players for him too. Obviously, we need to invest in a couple additions, but I think that is one where we can, as close as possibly, continue what we were kind of on. It's not going to completely just be a smooth transition, but I think that's the one where it's as smooth as it possibly could be. But this is going to be an interesting saga. Steven, how long do you think it takes before we name our manager?
I'd like to see it soon. Like what Jerry said, in the next few days, I'd like to kind of have this sorted, especially for the players' well-being heading into the Euros, and just for the fan base in general, and hopefully for Lotito's ease of mind. Like, you've seen what's happened, and we've talked about, okay, maybe Inzaghi wasn't waiting for this or an opportunity to arise, but it seems fishy that, we're meeting on Wednesday and a day before Conte quits, and then a day later Inzaghi signed. It was a little bit fishy on that boat too. And then you see the likes of Conte being thrown around to one team or another, Allegri one team or another, Spalletti. It's so many different names that are being thrown around right now. So it's going to be interesting to see ultimately when we kind of look back at this and see who goes where. That would be a good thing to take a look upon into the future. But I'd like to say in the next few days to get a manager, but the options that are being thrown around right now, Gattuso, I probably am going to go on record and say that I would have liked him. I don't know if he would have done well, but I like his passion and his drive, and I think he would have been able to get the same amount out of the players. Not on
Jerry's shaking his head. I'm with Jerry on this one.
Not on a technical level, because I know that he's had the quality and talent on Napoli and Milan, but I like how he would have been a similar figure on the sidelines compared to Inzaghi. Whether it be his tactics weren't as good, we all know that. But like the way he was as a personal figure, I think that Inzaghi is that he's most similar to Inzaghi out of all the managers that are out there. Mihajlovic, I can't really see being an upgrade, like Jerry and everyone else has said. I think he would just be a very average switch. I think that would be showing that we are kind of degrading, going into that mid-table club again, and a few of our top players would leave. Next person that Jerry had mentioned as well, Vincenzo Italiano. I think that's kind of our best bet right now. De Zerbi would have been number one, I think, in all of our minds before he went to Shakhtar. That was quite disappointing to see. But this is what I mean. This week has been very hectic with all the news and changes that have been going on with managers and stuff like that. I don't know if there's talks between all of them right now, but it really does seem like a carousel whereby we're going in a circle and we're not stopping this week. So it's one of those things where we got to look at the availability. And Gattuso is one option. He's gone. You have the likes of, I think it's Conceição or Conceição. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, but you see the likes of him probably staying with Porto. He was supposed to go to Napoli, not anymore. Then you have Mihajlovic. I don't think that he's the right choice. So I think someone like an Italiano comes in at a low risk, offers more of that attacking style that I've craved for. I've tweeted that out there and said I want a more attacking style of play. None of this nonsense playing from the back anymore and continuing to stay back on our back line so much. I want to be pressing forward. So whether that be switching formation like Italiano does with the 4-3-3 or 4 at the back and 3 attackers, whatever the situation may be, I think he's kind of our best bet. But who knows? There might be something from abroad that's pending. I've seen a few different names, but we'll have to see over the next few days, maybe next few weeks. But I hope and I want to say that this gets sorted within a week max.
Yeah, and I'll throw out a couple low under the radar names, and actually Edo on our chat here tossed in one of the names I wanted to throw out as very under the radar, but Matias Almeida would be one. Obviously, former Lazio player, has been coaching for quite some time, coached in Argentina, is currently in Major League Soccer with San Jose. Hasn't quite seen a ton of success in MLS. You can't always pinpoint that on a coach, obviously different talent. And then another one I want to throw out is really under the radar, but has coached, is a former Lazio great, obviously would resonate with the fans, is Alessandro Nesta, who was last managing Frosinone. But there's a couple former Lazio players out there with not a ton of experience. But again, Inzaghi didn't have that either. So it goes back to, I think what we'll see is either going a direction of ambition with the likes of Sarri, or complete overhaul and going with that Inzaghi 2.0, where Lotito.
It's going to be an overhaul with the formation change, right? Let's say we bring in ambitious Sarri. I don't think that our current personnel, I don't think that we can fit a 4-3-3 Sarri ball or a 4-2-3-1 Sarri ball. I don't think that would be the case right now. I really don't. I don't think we have wingers right now that are capable. We have Lazio who's fast. Is he a right winger? I don't think so. Do we have a left winger? We could play Tuku Correa there, but who knows? I don't think we have the capability in the personnel right now. And then that's one thing we have to go back to with Lotito. Is he going to spend this money to get people for whole new information? Maybe it only lasts a year or two. I can't see that being the case. I think he's going to want to go long term again with someone like Lazio great, which is where I wanted to pose the next question after you're done speaking, Shawn. But just, do you see that it's going to be a Lazio great or a former Lazio ties to the club sort of manager that comes in, or are we going to go with someone like Sarri or Italiano or someone who doesn't really have ties with the club? Because we've seen that for a little bit now. So maybe we switch things up. Maybe we keep it the same.
Yeah, I mean, if I was putting money on it today, I would see it as being, again, an Inzaghi 2.0. I think what Lotito, in terms of his personality, likes a younger manager where he can control the situation. He likes to obviously be the one with all the power. It worked with Inzaghi. So in terms of Lotito going back to the well and thinking it's going to work again, this is not me saying it's the right move, but in terms of affordable, cheap, wanting to appease the fans, again, going back to what worked before, I could see him going the route of a Nesta or an Almeida. Mihajlovic, a little too experienced, is going to butt heads. Obviously, Jerry mentioned the Iliutare conflict. I mean, I could see him throwing those opportunities to the young guys out there with ties to the club. That's, if I had to put money on it today, that's the way I would see it.
Nesta was a good show. Nesta's been one that hasn't been mentioned yet. So that's interesting because obviously he's not employed right now. So that would kind of
want him. Don't want him. If you couldn't hack it at Frosinone, man, you're not hacking it at Lazio to that much. You're not hacking it at all. Like, he bottled it up with Frosinone. That's all I can say. Like, he had it all season last year, and he screwed it up in the playoffs. I think he needs seasoning. And I think the last thing that people forget about Inzaghi is that what made him so successful, and that article idea I pitched to you, Steve, remember? The difference between him and Pirlo is that Pirlo never had seasoning. Frank Lampard in the EPL never really had any experience background in coaching. Inzaghi had 4 or 5 seasons in the Primavera, understood how to develop young players, how to get them to the next level. I believe he won a championship in the Primavera. Like, he did what he had to get to that next level. And credit to Lotito, where he gave him that seasoning to get him to that level. And then look what it paid off to be. 5 years of being a good manager for Lazio. I think that
I know, but you're using this as kind of a knock against Nesta, and I mean, again, I'll go back to an Inzaghi 2.0. Nesta has manager experience, not at the level we want to see it, but neither did Inzaghi. But again, both of them have more experience than a Pirlo. But I mean, Nesta managed. I mean, he started his career managing in the United States. And then has that experience with a Perugia, Frosinone, and then Almeida again. Almeida was at River Plate. Almeida managed in Major League Soccer. He managed in Liga MX. So those are two guys, while it's not the experience that we would want, just kind of understanding the mindset of a Lotito. And both of them at least have something, whereas the way of a Pirlo, I mean, you're right, Pirlo had none. Pirlo had no experience whatsoever at any level, which is why I think, Juventus fans were so upset. Ultimately, he didn't drive the car completely off the cliff, but there's just different level of talent there. But he got pretty close, but he swerved right at the end. So yeah.
In the comments here we got Raouf. He said Leonardo Jardim. I don't know too much about him. I know that he was at Monaco for a bit. It's another foreign.
He won Ligue 1.
Sorry, Anthony?
He won Ligue 1 with Monaco.
Yes. And then Luca said, don't be surprised it's a foreign name outside of Italy. So, like we said, I think there's a few different options. And if there's one thing that we know, most things go under the radar with Lazio's transfer market until the final minute. We don't usually hear too much about it. These names that are being pushed out there right now, although DiMarzio and Fabrizio Romano are pushing these names out there, and maybe there are contacts, it could totally be a name that we've never expected. Kind of like Nesta, for example. No one's been mentioning him. That's kind of come underneath the radar, right? So there will be talks with other managers and such. He's obviously going to have to take some time and talk around and basically say, hey, here's a salary I'm willing to offer you, obviously depending on which manager it is. Here's the project right now. Are we going to keep our main players? That's something that also has to be mentioned and clarified with each manager he's going to talk about. There's a lot of talking points, I feel, with whoever he's going to try to employ. And that's why, although I hope to see this kind of end over the next few days or max a week, it could be up there with close to after the Euros, beginning of the Euros and such like.
Yeah, that's in line with every transfer window we have. I mean, nothing suggests that this is going to happen quickly. But I'll say this: if it's a Nesta, I'm coming for Fabrizio Romano's job, and that's mine now.
Is it possible that they maybe appoint like a custodial manager for like a season if no one's available?
I can't really see who would go in. Roki maybe, like Menachini from the Primavera.
They pull up somebody from the Primavera, or they
maybe. Oh,
I can't see that.
Iacchini, maybe. I could see
a Peruzzi. Like, is he? I mean,
yeah. What happens to Peruzzi now?
Is he done? I'm saying it now. I think both Tade and Peruzzi, I think they were part of this trio with Inzaghi and Lotito. I think they were them four always together. I think now that Inzaghi is left, I honestly want to say that Tade and Peruzzi are both out. I think that Lotito is going to restart. At least one more of those two are going to be gone. I'd like to see not Tade. I think Tade, like we said, he's past his prime, way past his prime, and we can't be used as a camp to bring in these players who are too risky. It was good for a little bit, but now that we're a top four club, we're trying to aim for top four. We can't be taking risks on players like a Luis Alberto anymore. We have to be getting proven talent, and he hasn't been able to show that he's been able to do that job. So I think that he's going to be the one that's most likely out. But Peruzzi's had those clashes and those ties ahead at the beginning of the season with Lotito, with Tade, and siding with one or the other, right? So who knows? It could be a fresh restart. I went out there on Twitter today and said it. I think there's going to be massive changes at the club this year. I really don't see – I can't see all of our star players remaining. I think that Immobile is obviously going to be who stays. Milinkovic-Savic, unless PSG or Real Madrid or Barcelona come knocking at the door, I can't see him leaving. So I think it's going to be a Correa or Luis Alberto. One of those two will be leaving.
Alberto's leaving. Correa will not leave because he's still young, still has a lot of upside. If you don't sell Alberto now, what are you going to get for him? He's 27, 28 years old, okay? He's at the highest peak in his career. Like, I don't think he can go above his skill level. Like, we got the max of Alberto. We got a Ferrari right now. The Ferrari is zooming. If we wait another year, I think we end up like being Ferrari where they're shit now, okay? And we take 2 steps back. If you're going to want to sell Alberto, it's got to be now or never. Because
I think that's the same thing with Correa, though, Jerry. I mean, Correa's around that same age. I think if we're going – look, I love to keep our guys, but if we're strictly talking business, new project, I mean, Correa's value is never going to be higher. And we saw him come into form at the end of the season after, in terms of Serie A this year, he wasn't scoring goals until he did it in a chunk towards the end. But he's at that same age where I think what he is what he is. And it's going to be a player that plays in flashes. You're never going to get consistent performance from him. And he's also one of our players that is going to see a return where if we hold on, I agree with you about Luis Alberto. I just think both of those guys are exactly the same in terms of both being around the same age, both being at their absolute peak. And if we need funds, those are the only two real option for us. Certainly, Milinkovic-Savic is the one that's the real prize money for anybody. But I think he's going to be out of budget for almost every club out there, and Lotito's not going to budge and sell him for undervalue. And he is. I mean, we still want to be respectable next season, and I believe by keeping Milinkovic-Savic and Immobile, we at least still have a little bit of a backbone to compete. So, I mean, I agree with you, Jerry, with Alberto, but I think Correa is in that group as well.
You know what I keep thinking about when I'm thinking about Milinkovic-Savic leaving, I think about that Guardiola clip that came out and talking about it and basically in tears crying about Aguero leaving, where he's like, "You can't replace him. You can't replace him." Savic, I think it's a different story with the likes of a Correa and an Alberto. Although like Luis Alberto puts up crazy numbers, he's an awesome playmaker. It's going to be easier to replace him than someone like Milinkovic-Savic. But ultimately, like I hope, I'll say this, that Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic will stay. And like you said, Shawn, I hope it's Correa that ends up leaving. I think we could probably get around the same fee as we can for Luis Alberto, but he's not as impactful. We can't have a player who plays in spurts. We need someone who's going to be the top level at least 75%, if not more of the time, like we see with Immobile, like we see with Luis Alberto, and like we see with Milinkovic-Savic. Correa, like you said, he hot streaks. So it's good at certain points, and we'll always remember those big goals when they come, and in those moments where we're looking for a goal, and he shows a little bit of flair and that talent that we miss so much, but it's not there all the time. So hopefully at a different club, he's able to, whatever team he goes to, I could see him going to a top club because he does have that talent, but hopefully they're able to get like that out of him where he's able to shine every so part of a game, because we see him just fade out in matches. Like, we're like, oh, who's playing up top of the Mobile? And I'm like, oh, there's Correa. Why hasn't he touched the ball in the last 15 minutes? So it's one of those things, like, it's got to be solved. But yeah.
And you got to think about it from the perspective of it depends what manager we get. If we get a Sadi and he's playing a 4-3-3, Steven, like you said earlier, we just don't have the players for that. So if you're looking to flip a player and then buy a few more, you sell a Correa who, if we only have one striker at the top of the 4-3-3, like one true striker, you don't need 3-4 guys at striker. You don't need, we have Immobile, Caicedo, Correa, and I think we're going to keep Marici. I think they're not going to give up on him yet. You don't need 4 guys.
Different time. We can have a story about him at another point.
Yeah, but you always, when you only have one, you don't need 4 strikers. You need guys on the wing. So I mean, there's going to be, depending on the formation that comes in with the new manager, I think there's going to be some casualties in terms of the Lazio roster. There's going to be some guys that we're going to have to see go.
Absolutely.
Which is fine by me.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough transfer window. Again, I think that first domino to fall is going to have to be our manager. But look, I think we've been going for just a little over an hour. This was I don't know about you guys. This has been much needed for me. Been kind of bottling up the emotions all day at work. I hope you guys feel a little bit better. There's a lot of uncertainty. I'll be glued to my Twitter just to obviously see the news of what's going on and what comes out these next few days. But appreciate all your time. This was really helpful for me. Important therapy session. I hope it was for you guys as well. To everybody that joined in, grazie. And as always, sempre Forza Lazio.